Hello, everyone. Let me tell you a bit about us. We are an organization that has taken the initiative to bridge the gap which students face when transitioning from their college to their professional career. Our team comprises of individuals from multinational corporations like Sony and Adobe. We also like to teach and share what we have learned, this workshop being one such initiative. I would like to set some guidelines before we proceed. Handling everyone's doubts while the concepts are being delivered is difficult. Hence, we would like you to message us your doubts and any errors you face in the chat box. We will try our best to help you to resolve it. First of all, let's talk about why should we have knowledge about building a website and an app. Having a well-designed website describing what you do describes your personality much more strongly and sends a clear message to people that you are serious about your career, and it is a much better platform to showcase your work than a resume. Employers want to know your experience and projects, but they also want to know what it's like to work with you, and it's easier to convey with a dynamic website than a piece of paper, and hence increasing chance of you being hired than any other person. Before we get to what is HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap, let us try to analyze our own website for the demonstration at www.autonise.com. So this is the website. First of all, let us try to understand what the URL, which is the Universal Resource Locator, compromises of. So first of all, you can see that there is some HTTPS, which is the protocol. Next, there is the www, which is called the subdomain. Next, there is autonized.com, which is called the domain name. And next, we have a path, which changes the view of the web page. So I'll go back to the slides. In a similar fashion, this is also a URL for your GitHub pages. So the protocol here is also HTTPS. It can also be HTTP. Next, the subdomain name, which was earlier www, it can be anything. So it's right now Mayank GitHub, which is also your GitHub username. Next, we have the domain name, which is github.io. In this website, the domain name was autonise.com. So what exactly is the domain name, subdomain name, and protocol? So the protocol is the way in which the website content is displayed to you. S stands for secure. It means that whatever data you send through this protocol would be encrypted. What is the domain name? So let's say you want to create your own website. Now that website would be hosted on a server which has an IP address. That IP address is not human readable. It compromises of some numbers. But let's say you want to share your own homepage. So you can't actually give the IP address of the computer to the user. Let's say instead of facebook.com, you had to type 123.123.123. That's a bit irritating, isn't it? So we have some domain names which can point to an IP address. So the domain name is unique, and you can point that domain name along with the subdomain name to a specific IP address which is associated with a computer which will host your own website. Next, we have the subdomain name. So you have your domain name, and that's unique. I will tell exactly how to get a domain name, but let's say we have the domain name. Now you want to host another website. Do you need to buy another domain name for that? That's not necessary. You can create a lot of subdomain names inside your own domain name free of charge. So you can have your www or some, let's say, a username or any other subdomain name and point it to a different IP address or a website. So that way, even if you have only one domain, you can point it to different servers and have infinite number of websites on a single domain. So this is the breakup of the URL. Next, let's talk about where do we get it from. So there are some domain name providers like Google Domains and GoDaddy. You can go over there and you can purchase the domain name. The domain name cost depends upon the popularity of that particular domain name. For example, if you want to buy a .com domain, then it might cost a bit more than a .org. Currently, because AI has been really popular, .ai domains are really costly. So that is where you can get the domain names from. Next, let us try to actually analyze our website. So this is the website. Let's first try to understand what responsiveness means in a website. So if you notice this website, there is the upper navigation bar, then there is an image over here, there is some content. I'll go down as well, and we have some images over here as well. What would happen if I keep on decreasing the width of the window? Let's say the width of the window is really small, like a mobile phone. Then, if we have all three of these images, like taking the whole width, then they would become very small. That would not look good. So, we want our browser to be responsive to the width of the screen. Let's see what happens. So I'm decreasing the width of the window. You can first see that the padding, which is on the left and the right, keeps on decreasing. By padding, I mean the white space you can see on the left and the right. After a certain point, you can see the size of the images decreased. So that's also good. Maybe, so this shows that the screen is really responsive. Next, let's on keep on decreasing. So now when I'm decreasing, you can see that the padding on the left and right is decreasing. Further, after this checkpoint, a breakpoint, the image size decreased further. Now, when I go beyond a certain point, you can see that the images, instead of staying in the same horizontal row, now they are in three different rows. So that's really great because now the images can be large, even though, like, if earlier they were taking all the three images were in the same row, they would have looked really bad right now. So that is how you say a website is responsive. Further, if you noticed, the upper navigation bar, after getting reduced at a certain point, it converts into a button, which if I click, I would be able to see the side navigation bar. So that's also one part of the website being responsive. The other part is that you can see an image over here. I don't want to see this image when I'm viewing it on a very thin width screen or a mobile phone, let's say. So after a certain point, the image disappears. That's also one part of this being responsive. So that is what responsive means in a website. We'll talk exactly how to make our website responsive in the later sections, but a good website should always be responsive to the width of the screen so that even if your client or user views this website on a very large screen or a tablet size screen or a mobile phone, your website should look good. So always keep in mind these things while building a website. Next, let us try to understand the different components of a website. I won't take specific names here to confuse you, but let's give you a structure of the website. So first of all, there is a skeleton to the website. That is that there should be an image, there should be some tabs, there should be an image. I'm not saying where the image should be, but there should be an image. So that's the skeleton. So there are three images and so on. All those parts are specified in HTML. So your HTML is the skeleton of your website. Now, what we wanted this skeleton, so just having a skeleton won't really make your website look good. What you want to have is design. So the design part of the website is controlled by CSS. We want our image to be on the right hand side. We want our content to be on the left hand side. We want the color of this text to be different from the color of this text. All those styling. When I hover over to register here, you can see that the color of the button changes. All these styling has been applied through CSS. Next, there is one more component of a website. Usually, the websites you see change upon your user experience. So let's say you open a Facebook, you will see a different content than when I open my own Facebook. That part, the dynamic part of a website or the logic is controlled by JavaScript. To see the effect of JavaScript, you can like when I click on this drop down, you can see as I have already logged in, I'm seeing a logout button and my accounts, past workshops, and so on. Let's log out. Then you can see that this button has changed because I'm not yet logged in. I'm getting the option to log in. So this part of a website is controlled by JavaScript. So I hope you now understand the three concepts or the three structures or building blocks of a website, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I'll reiterate once. HTML handles the skeleton of the website. So what your content should be. Should it be an image? Should it be text? Should it be a button? That is handled by HTML. CSS provides the design on top of HTML. How it should look, what should happen when you hover over it, where should be the placement, all those things are handled by CSS. Then the logic part of the website or the dynamic part is handled by JavaScript. So these three combined together form a website. Next, let us so now that you know what a domain name is and what are the components of a website, um, I'll talk briefly about your assignment. Your assignment is going to be to host your own web page on GitHub Pages. So you don't need to buy your own domain name. What you can do is you can use GitHub, put a repository or a project on GitHub, and it will automatically provide you a web page on your username.github.io. For GitHub, it's really actually free to just provide a new website on a new subdomain. So it does not cost them anything, and it's really great for you to put your resume as well. So let us start our first session on HTML. We talked briefly about how a website can be broken down, the structure, the design, and the logic. HTML, which is Hypertext Markup Language, defines the structure of the website. It is sometimes used to even design the website, but we will look into CSS later on, which gives us a lot more control on how a website looks. Let us have a look at how we are going to approach learning HTML. First of all, we'll understand the basic template of an HTML code. Then we will understand basic HTML elements which are commonly used while making a website. So this is a structure of a standard HTML code. Yeah. So first of all, let's start with what the doc type HTML means. So HTML has been there in the market for a very long time and it has gone through a lot of iterations. If you want to specify the version of the HTML you want your website to be using, you have to specify it using this doc type element. Currently, the version of the HTML is at 5 and specifying doc type HTML will say the browser that you should use HTML5 for understanding our code. So next is the HTML tag. So inside this tag, all of our code for the website goes inside the HTML tag. Inside the HTML tag, we have two main tags, which is the head tag and the body tag. So what's the difference between the head tag and the body tag? The head tag is executed before even the website starts getting displayed. So it can happen that you want to first fetch a library or do some stuff before even the website starts getting displayed. You should put those kind of codes inside the head tag. Inside the head, you can have the title tag, which will specify the text which should appear on the tab of your web page. So for example, if I go to www.autonise.com, you can see that Autonise workshop is displayed on the tab of the browser. This can be specified using the title tag. To close a head tag, you just specify a slash and a head, and it means that the head tag has been closed. Next, whatever you want to be shown on the website should be put in the body tag. So there are some tags like h1 which are used to specify the heading, p tag which is used to specify the paragraph. We will learn in depth about more tags later on. Yeah, so let's start with understanding some HTML elements and their uses. These are some of the common HTML tags used in websites. So we'll go over them one by one. Even if you are not able to memorize all of them, with usage, you will get a hang of these. Let's start with the p tag. So the p tag is used to specify a paragraph. So whenever you put your text inside a paragraph or the p tag, a new line would appear automatically before the p tag. So if you have multiple p tags, then the content inside each p tag would be displayed after a new line or an enter. So in HTML, if you don't use a p tag and you just apply a enter in your code, that enter won't actually be displayed on the website. We'll have a look at this when we are trying to build our own website. This is the example usage. You just apply the p tag and put some text inside it. This text would automatically come in a new line. Next, we have the a tag. So the a tag is a very important tag and it is used to specify hyperlinks which can take you from one page to the another. It can take you from one page of your own website to another page, or it can even take you from one page of your website to a completely different website. The A tag has its own stylings, so you can have a look at them over here. The example usage of an A tag is that you first have an A tag, then you specify the attributes of the A tag. So href is a necessary attribute of an A tag. So href will contain the link at which you want for when you click, let's say, visit the workshop page, you will be redirected to https www.autonise.com. So you can specify the page you want to go to inside the href attribute. So that's it about the A tag. So whenever you want to go from one page to another, you use the A tag. Next, we have the header tags h1 till h6. As you can see in this image, when you use h1, you will get a header this big. Then h2, h3, h4, h5, and h6. To use them, it's very simple. Just have a h1 tag and you can put the text inside it. To close any tag, just put a slash and the name of the tag, and the tag gets closed. So you can have headings from 1 to 6, and this is how it will look. If you remember, I said earlier that CSS is used for styling, but sometimes HTML itself can be used to style your website. So this is one of the tags which is used for styling. Though it will not give you much control. Let's say you want to have a heading, let's say 1.5, which is in between these two font sizes. You can't have them using HTML. For that, you need to use CSS. So next, let's have a look at the button tag. If you remember, in the autonise.com website, we had a button tag. Let me show it to you. So this is a button. When I click over it, I can be redirected to a new website, or even it can, let's say in the login, if I click on this, it can serve a function. Like if I want to log in with Google or do any stuff. So buttons are usually linked with the JS code, and these are used to make your site interactive. So the example usage is that you have a button tag. Inside that, you have to specify the type of the button. So this type is an attribute of the button tag. So I'm using tag and attribute over here. So attribute is just a property of the button tag. Instead of tag, some people even call this elements. So the button element has the attribute type, which is button. So you can have many types, and the text inside it is click me. So the content you will see inside the button is click me. When you click over it, you can apply some logic, maybe change the website or do some stuff. We'll come to this on how to exactly use this button in the JavaScript session. Next, we have the text area tag. The text area tag defines a multi-line text input control. It means that you will get a text area in which you can type your paragraphs, and those can be used with JS to, let's say, fill a form or change the website depending upon the text area. The example usage of text area is like this. The text area element or tag has the attribute rows and columns. These specify the rows specifies the height and column specifies the width of the text area. You can even put some predefined text inside the text area, and you can even edit it in a web browser. Also, the text area can hold unlimited number of characters. Even if you have specified the height and the width, if you keep on typing it, you'll get a scroll bar on the right hand side. We will be having a look at all these elements in the further sessions. That is why I'm not giving you an example right now. Next is the input tag. The input tag is used to take, as its name suggests, some input from the user. It can be in the form of a file, a password, or a text, or a radio button, and so on. I have shown the example usages over here. So the input element or tag has an attribute type, which can be text, password, file, and a lot more, and it will change the way you take the input from the user. Next is the BR tag. So the BR tag is like a line breaker. So as I said earlier, you can use the P tag, which is the paragraph tag, to have your content on a new line. But let's say you want to have small parts of a sentence in a new line. It's really clumsy to use the P tag in such a way. So it's usually better to have a BR tag to force a line break even inside a paragraph. You can avoid using BR, you can just use the P tag, but the BR tag makes it easier because you don't need to close it. So you can see the P tag needs to be closed, but the BR tag can you don't need to close it. So that makes the code a bit prettier. Next is the image tag, which you will be using a lot. As the name suggests, it's used to show image on the web browser. I'll directly get to the example usage. So the example usage, there are two attributes of an image tag. There are many more actually, but these source and alt are the important ones. The source specifies the location of your image. It can be on a different server or it can be on your same website. So when you specify the source, at this link, there is an image and it will be displayed on your web browser. Next is the alt tag. Now, what happens if this image is not available? Let's say there is a bug, you maybe have misspelled the source tag, then you want the HTML to be able to display something, and it will display whatever is written inside the alt tag. So if the image is not available, it will show the Autonise logo text instead of the image. Also, many search engines use the alt tag to display. So whenever you type a keyword, the search engines, they go through the alt tag, and if your keyword matches with the alt tag, then they show that image in the results. You can also specify the width and the height, though it's not necessary. Next is the div and span tag. Usually it is a bit difficult to understand the exact difference. I'll try my best to explain it over here. If you don't understand it, you can obviously ask it in the doubt sessions. So the div tag defines a division or a section in an HTML document. Span is an inline element instead of a block element. So what I'll do is I'll explain you the difference between an inline element and a block element. Block element takes up the whole width of the screen available. So if you use a div tag and you put some content over inside it, even though the content might take only one character, the div tag reserves the entire width of the screen for that. So if you change the background color of a div tag, the entire rose color would change. But if you write some content inside span, then the span tag takes only the width of the content inside it. So if you change the background color of a span tag, it will only change the background color of the content inside it. This can be used for different applications. We'll give you an example of this in the doubt session. So that's it for the HTML, understanding the basic HTML tags. Even if you don't remember all of them, That's totally fine. You should just know that there are some tags like the image, input, and button. As and when you use them, you'll get more comfortable with them. Next, we will be learning about CSS and how to style the HTML tags. So now we know what HTML is. It helps us in defining the structure of the website. But does just having the structure look nice? Let's have a look at a basic HTML code, understanding the tags we have learned till now. So first of all, I have opened a folder. Inside the folder, I have many HTML files. What I'll do is I'll open this up in a Visual Studio Code. So you can see that I have opened the code in Visual Studio. I have already written down some of the boilerplate code. Also, if you want to view your HTML file in a browser, just right click on it, open with other application, and open it with a browser. You can see that it's currently blank as we have not added any content to it, but I have added the title over here which says understanding CSS, and you can see it's shown over here in the title. So now let's write some basic code in our HTML file and try to understand why we require CSS. Yep. So yeah, let's actually first use the image tag. You can see my Visual Studio Code is providing me with some suggestions. If I press enter, it takes in the image tag. Also, it gives me the suggestion for the attributes as well. So I'll select source. Inside source, I'll write down the location of the image using a URL. Yep. So this should show an image in our HTML file. You can see that there is nothing over here. So refresh it once, and yeah, you can see that the image has been loaded over here. Next, let's add a p tag. Here is a paragraph. Let's refresh the browser again, and you can see that a paragraph has been displayed in the web page. Let's add an a tag over here. The a tag has the attribute href. If I add, let's say I add the same link of the image in the href. This is a href, and I refresh this page. You can see that a style has been applied to this href. If I click on it, it takes me to the URL which was provided in the href. You can even put google.com over here. Refresh this. I, I believe we should also add the, so it takes you to the google.com web page. So the a tag can be used to navigate between different pages or even go to completely different websites. Next, let's once check out the button tab. This is a button. type is button. You can see a button is also now visible over here. Clicking it does not do anything because we have not added the logic of what should happen when we press the button. That part we learn later on in the JavaScript session. So now I have shown you the examples of what each tag does in a web page. A quick question to everyone. Does this look nice? I believe not. So earlier I talked about responsiveness. You can see that when I am decreasing the size of the window, just a second. So when I am decreasing the size of the window, the content does not change. Ideally, the image size should have decreased. Also, it looks really nice if the content would have been in the center with some background color and so on. All those styles we'll learn now how to apply using CSS. There are different ways of applying CSS to your HTML code. Let's have a look at them one by one. So the first is directly applying the CSS inline. So let's understand what it means. For that, I will remove or comment the current code. I'll create just a p tag. Let's say let us learn CSS. So it just says let us learn CSS right now. Let's say we want to apply the style color inside this. So the way to apply styling to this p tag is that this p tag has an attribute style. In this style, it's, you can see Visual Studio Code is giving me a lot of options for styles. I'll choose color. For this color, let's put it as blue and let's save this. Let's refresh this and you can see that the color of the text has changed to blue. So this way you can apply CSS in line. So this code, the color is blue, is CSS. You can add multiple styles by separating them with a semicolon. Let's say you want to change the font size. So there is a style named font size, and let's say you want it to be 20 pixels. Let's refresh this, and you can see that the size of the text has increased. You can further increase it by changing the value in pixels of the font size. This way you can apply multiple CSS to your paragraph. Let's say you have the use case that all paragraphs inside the HTML should be of the same style. Let's say we have another paragraph over here. This is another paragraph and so on. You can see that the first paragraph has a different style and all the other paragraphs have the basic normal style. To apply the same style to all of them, you'll have to copy and paste all this code and then you can see that all the style match now. But let's say now you think 40 pixels is too large. I just want it to be 26. Now that's a problem. For changing all of these, we'll have to keep on changing individually each of the paragraphs. This can become a huge pain if your project is really big. To take care of this, you can apply the same style to all p tags. To do that, first create a style tag inside your head, type P with curly braces, and over here you can put the color to be blue. What this does is that all P tags now will have the color blue. So let's remove the style over here. Let's just remove all of them. Now you can see, even though I have not applied any style over here, all the P tags have the color blue. If you want to change the font size of all the P tags to 16 pixels, just change it over here. One second, let's put it 24, and you can see that the font size of all the P tags has changed. So this is another way of applying CSS. Next, but this can also cause a problem. Let's say you want to apply the P tag, like all the three P tags, the color blue, but you want this P tag to have the normal styling. How do you do that then? So the best way is to create a class. So let's say I create a class named blue or blue color, and I put the property using CSS. The color should be blue. Now to apply this blue color to these three P tags, first of all, let's remove this CSS code. So I've commented this out. To comment out your code, you can select the part of the code and press Control plus forward slash. That comments out your part of the code. To uncomment, you can use Control plus forward slash again. So, and that's applicable in all programming languages. So next, we have the blue color class. To apply it in the P tag, it has the attribute class, and just write blue class. You can see that I have put a dot in front of the blue color. Sorry, it should be blue color. Yeah. So the dot specifies that the blue color is a class and not an element. During defining the CSS of the P tag, I did not put a dot in front of it because it's an element. So now, while applying the class, you don't need to put a dot over here. Let's apply this class to the first three tags. You can see the first three P tags have the color blue, and the last P tag has the normal styling. You can here change the font size to 24 pixels. And yeah, all three have now changed to the font size 24 pixels. So these are the three ways of applying CSS. One is to apply an inline CSS. Second is to apply CSS to all the elements. Third is to use a class, and using the class attribute, specify for each P tag the corresponding class. Another way of applying CSS is to use a library from outside. So if you keep on developing web pages for a lot of time, you'll notice that you might need this blue color class in every project. So you cannot keep on writing the blue color class every time. It's really inefficient. So the way to do that is you create another file which will contain this class blue color, and you import it inside your HTML file. To do that, you can use the link element. So let's see how to import CSS using the link element. Just a moment. So you can see this is an example of a link element. It has the attribute rel, which has the value style sheet. So can have a link can be used to import a lot of files. By specifying the rel attribute, we are saying what kind of file we are importing using the link element. The href, like the a attribute, specifies the link from which we want to import our library. So currently it's really long, so I'll just remove it and say is link to our CSS file. Then there is the integrity. So what can happen is if you are importing a file which is not hosted on your own platform, then you are trusting the file a lot. Let's say at the time when you were using the file, it did not have any malicious code. But later on, some hacker hacked the file on some other guy's platform and put some malicious code over there. What would happen is everyone who is using that file would now get the malicious code of the hacker and their website would be compromised. To stop that, what you can do is you can use this integrity attribute. So when you when the browser downloads the file present at href, it first converts it into a hash. This hash is then compared to this value which is found in the integrity. For those who are unfamiliar with hashing is a function which will convert your entire code to a gibberish text like this. Even if you change one part of the code, this value would change. Hence, this integrity won't match and your browser won't load that file. So this is really good for keeping your website secure. So this is how you use the link attribute to import CSS from outside. So you can define the blue color in inside your CSS file and you will be able to access the blue color as a class over here. We will have a look at how to use this link when using the Bootstrap library. Bootstrap is a library which has a lot of CSS classes already defined for us. We'll be using those classes instead of writing our own every time. Now, let's get familiar with some of the common CSS styles. So we have seen color and font size. So next, let's see width. So earlier we had imported an image. So this is how the image looked. What if we want the width of the image to be small? So we can do that by applying an inline style which says the width should be 100 pixels. Let's save this and refresh the HTML page and you can see that the width of the image has become shorter. You can also see that the height has changed automatically. But let's say you want to also fix the height to be 200 pixels. This will stretch the image, but you can specify the height and the width by using these properties. Next, let's apply the background property. So we have a paragraph saying here is a paragraph. Let's apply an inline style over here which says background color is blue. Let's save this and you can see the background color of the entire row has changed to blue. So I had talked about the p tag and I had said that it creates a new line when you use a p tag. Content basic enter do this. So this is the first line. I put an enter over here. This is the second line. If I save this, you can see that even though I had put an enter over here, that's not visible in the web page. If you want to create an enter, you need to use the br tag. So now you can see that these two lines have come on two different lines. So either you can use the p tag or the br, and you can also specify multiple brs to add new lines. So we were talking about styling and the background color. I also told you that we'll see the difference between div and span in the later sections. So let's cover it up now. Let's create a div. This is a text inside a div. And let's create a span. This is a text inside a span. To remove the clutter, I would comment out all these codes and also these codes. So you can see that they look nearly same. There is no difference of this text being in the div tag or the span tag. To understand the difference, let's apply some style over div. Let's apply a background color of red to the div and a background color of blue to the span. You can see that the div has now the background color red and the span has the background color blue, but the div applies the background color to the entire row, whereas the span only applies it to the content which is inside it. So this is the difference between div and span. So div takes up the entire row, whereas span just wraps up the content inside of it. This can be useful sometimes because whatever comes after div would now be presented in a new line. But if you want to, let's say, have multiple colored text in the same line, you can use the span. This is a blue text. This is a black text. And this is a green text. So background color blue, black, and green. All of them are now in the same line. So this is the difference between div and span. So I'll comment this out as well. Next, you have already seen the font size CSS property. Also, currently I'm using the style inline, but you can obviously put it over here and see the changes by applying the class attribute. Next, let's see the text align property. So I will create a style here. The name of the property will be text align. And here you can see that the options are center, end, justify, left, right, start, and so on. Let's apply center. You can see that this is a paragraph is now being shown in the center of the screen. Similarly, if you want this image to be in the center, you can apply the style text align center. So nothing changed because the image only takes up the width of the content it has, and the content cannot be centered inside that. To center that image, we need to have it inside a div. It should be style. And if we have our image inside the style div, let's remove this. You can see the image has also been centered. So one more property of CSS is that all the elements which come inside the parent element already automatically have inherited the CSS of the parent. So if you create a div which has the style color blue, and if I put some, let's say a p tag over here, this is a centered p tag, then you can see that the color of this p tag is blue. Let's see what happens if we apply the style to the p tag as well and have the color red. You can see the priority of which style to apply to this p tag is first given to the properties which are applied directly to the p tag, and then if no property is applied, then the property of the parent is automatically applied to the p tag. So now you can see it is red. So now we have covered the text align property as well. Next we have two properties, which is the padding and the margin. To understand padding, first of all, let's change the color of this paragraph to white because the content is not visible. Yeah, so now it's visible. Let's say you want to have a padding which is a blue color at the bottom of the text as well as the top of the text and on the left side as well. So let's add a padding top of 10 pixels. Can you now see that there is padding on top of here is a paragraph? Similarly, let's add a padding bottom of 10 pixels. You can see now that there is a padding on the bottom as well. Next, let's add some padding to the left. And you can see that there is a padding on the left side as well. So this is how you can apply padding to your content. Next, let's see what the margin tag will do. To understand that, let's copy out 3 p tags. Let's say you want to increase the width, the space between here is a paragraph and the second here is a paragraph. You can do that by using margin. So let's apply a margin bottom to the first paragraph of 100 pixels. So you can see that there is a huge margin now after the first paragraph. If you noticed, when we applied padding, the background color extended outside, but when we used margin, it did not extend outside. So you can visualize this as when you use padding, then the, the space inside the content increases, and when you use margin, the space between the content and another content outside increases. To visualize this, you can even go to the developer mode. To go to the developer mode, you can directly click on this and use inspect element. So depending upon the browser and your settings, a console might open up on the right hand side or on the bottom of your screen. You can go to the layout or the computed. So let's go to the layout. Here you can see that this first paragraph has margin 16 pixels on top, 100 pixels on the bottom, 10 pixels of padding on the bottom, 10 on the top, and so on. You can even toggle the margin bottom and see how your website would look. This is really good if you want to just change and compare how your website would look by just toggling the CSS. Also, you can see all of your code in the inspector. When you hover over a p tag, you can even see the placement of it. So that's it for understanding CSS. We have covered how to apply CSS in three ways. The first one was inline. So this applying a style attribute inside the element is called inline CSS. Next, we saw how to apply CSS to entire elements. Next, we saw how to create a CSS class and apply it using the class attribute. So we learned how to apply CSS using three ways. We also learned how to import a library, which we'll have a look in a more depth when studying Bootstrap. We also learned some basic CSS properties like width, height, background, color, font size, text align, padding, and margin. We also had a look of how to open the inspector, which is by right clicking inspect element, or you can even press F12 to toggle the inspector. We also saw how to have a look at the margin and the padding in the box model. So now that we know how to define the structure of a website and also how to style it to make it look good. Now you will be introduced to a CSS library named Bootstrap. Some really enthusiastic people have created some predefined CSS classes which are very handy and frequently used. This makes the development of a website faster and also preempts some bugs which you might introduce if you were to write the classes from scratch. We will first see how we can change the background, text color, align text, and set the padding and margin using Bootstrap instead of CSS. Then we will understand a great functionality given by Bootstrap, namely Bootstrap Container. So first of all, let us understand how to import the Bootstrap library. Earlier, I gave you a hint that we'll need to use the link element. So to first see how to get the link to the CSS file of Bootstrap, first open up a browser. Just a second. Yeah, in the browser, type Bootstrap CDN. Go to the first link and in the drop down for CSS, click the HTML code and paste it over here. You can see that there is an href which points to a, just a second. So this href points to a .css file. It already has an integrity created. The cross origin anonymous sets that the link can be downloaded from even a file which is not on our server. So our server will obviously not be stackpath.bootstrapcdn.com. This is not our own domain name. So the browser can block this file from getting loaded if you don't apply the cross origin anonymous property. So this is how you import the Bootstrap CSS library. Bootstrap also has the JS library, and you can download, or like you can copy the code given over here and import it over here as well. We'll do that later on if we need to use the Bootstrap JS library as well. For now, I'll comment this out. Also, I'll delete out all of the content we have done till now. So let's open this realtime.html inside a browser. Yeah, so it's empty right now. So if you remember, I said that the Bootstrap is a library which has already predefined classes. So how do you know the name of all the classes which are inside Bootstrap? For that, you can go to the Bootstrap documentation. Some of you guys might have already have experience in reading C documentation codes. Let me tell you, reading a Bootstrap documentation is way easier and fun compared to understanding C or a C++ documentation. Let's open the first link. Here you can see the way to install a Bootstrap. You can get the Bootstrap CDN code as well. Let's say, so first I'll show you some existing classes which I already know. Then we'll see how to go through the documentation as well. So first of all, let's create a div which has some text. So you can see the some text appearing over here. Let's say we want to change the text color of this. So Bootstrap has an inbuilt class text success. Let's refresh this. Okay, just a moment. Yeah, so you can see that text primary changes the color of the text to blue. I guess I had made a spelling mistake. So having text success will change the color of the text to green. So you can use these inbuilt classes to change the color of your text. Next, let's see how to change the alignment of your text. So you can add another class by a space. The name of the class is text center. So when we apply this text center class, it automatically centers the text in the middle. You can also have text right. So you can see the text has gone to the right, or the text left, which is the default. So now we have seen how to change the text color and how to align the text using Bootstrap. All these classes are predefined inside Bootstrap. One more thing, if you are not able to remember all of these classes, that's totally fine. We'll have a look at how to go through the documentation to memorize all of these classes. So next, let's have a look at how to apply a background color to this div. To do that, we can use bg light. Um, for some of you, the color difference might not be visible, but if you can see, this is slightly grayish and this is white. Let's have increase the contrast. So I'll use bg dark, and you can see now that we have a dark color, nearly black, applied as a background to the div. We also have bg success, and we have text dark. So you can see the color of the text is now dark and the background now is green. Bootstrap also has padding and margin classes. To apply a padding, you can do P1. So doing P would apply a margin of 1 unit to all the directions. Let's see how our text changes. So I'll refresh it now, and you can see a bit padding has been applied to the top, the bottom, and the left side as well. Let's increase it to 2, and you can see the padding has increased. You can go from 1 till 5, and you'll get different units of padding applied to your div. But let's say you want to apply padding only to the left direction. Let's remove this P5 and apply a PL5. Now you can see that the padding has been applied only in the left direction. If you want to apply a padding to the top, then you can use PT4, and a padding has been applied to the top. Similarly, there is a PP4, which is padding bottom 4, and it applies padding to the bottom of 4 units. Let's say you want to combine padding top 4 and padding bottom 4. So you have the PY class. So as you can guess, this is padding in the Y direction of unit 4. So you can see it's unchanged because PT4 and PB4 when combined together to form PY4. Let's remove this to see its effect. So you can see all the padding has been removed. So this is how you can apply padding. Also, in a similar fashion to the Y, we have a PX class as well. So let's remove this PL5, and you can see a padding is present over here in the X direction. Um, so the padding at the right would not be visible because the text has not yet gone till the end of the width. So let's add some more text, and you can see there is a padding at the right as well. Yeah. So that's it about understanding padding using Bootstrap. Let's understand margin as well. Similar to padding, instead of P, we'll be using M. Let's create two divs. So you can see there is no space between the divs. So they appear to be joined. So let's add a margin bottom of unit 5. You can now see that there is some gap between the two divs. Similarly, there is margin top of 5. You can change 5 to 4, 3, and so on, and change the width, the spacing which has been added. Then there is a margin left of 5. Similarly, there is a margin right. Let's say I do a 4. So this way you can add margin to your div tag and apply spacing between two different elements or spacing between the window and the div. Similarly, like similar to padding, you can combine ML5 and MR5 into MX5. See, if you have this, I'll just remove them. You can see now it's taking the entire width. Now I do MX5 and a margin in the X direction of unit 5 has been applied. Similarly, MY5 applies a margin of 5 in the Y direction. So these are the commonly used classes of Bootstrap. If you want to have a look at them in the documentation, just type Bootstrap padding. So you get a Bootstrap spacing, go to the first link. Here they have explained in detail exactly what the text stands for. Also, I have not told you about the zero class. If you want to remove the padding, let's say your parent class has some padding, but you don't want it right now. So you can use P0 to remove those paddings, and you can go through this documentation to get an in-depth understanding of how padding and margin work in Bootstrap. Now, let's have a look at an interesting functionality provided by Bootstrap, namely Bootstrap containers. So first of all, I changed the title of this HTML file to Bootstrap containers. Let me remove the content we have added till now. So yeah, now it's empty. What I'll do is I'll add some code and then I'll explain it to you step by step. Let's save this. Yeah, so you can see now we have three columns. The first column is green, the second is red, and the third is blue. We also have some padding or a margin on the top. So let's analyze the code one by one. Yeah, so first we have a div which has the class attribute. Inside the class attribute, we have defined two classes, the container and the MT5. So I believe MT5 is clear by now. It's providing a margin to the top of unit 5. What exactly container does is that it's providing a padding on the left hand side as well as the right hand side. We'll have a look at different type of containers which will explain it to you exactly what this plain container does. So let's use container fluid. Let's update this. You can now see that our columns are now taking the entire width of the browser. If we change it back to container, you can see some padding has been added on the left hand side as well as the right hand side. If we keep on changing the width of the screen, then you can see that the padding keeps on decreasing, and after a certain point the padding becomes 0. So this is what the container does. Next, we have the class row. So you can imagine the container as a container for a grid. In the grid, you can have multiple rows and columns. Inside each column also, you can have multiple rows. To get an understanding, Bootstrap, you can imagine that there are 12 columns in this browser. For simplicity's sake, let's use container fluid. Now you can imagine there are 12 columns over here in Bootstrap. Let's say you want to give 2 columns to the green background, 5 columns to the red, and 5 columns to the blue. To do that, you can have call md2. I'll explain it to you what exactly these md and numbers mean. 5 and the remaining 5 columns to the column having the background as bg primary. So what has happened now is that there is one row. That one row has 3 columns. The first column has a background success. So BG stands for background and success stands for the green color. Similarly, here BG stands for background and danger stands for the red color and primary stands for blue color. You must have noticed this code, which is in Bootstrap, success means green, danger means red, and primary means blue. So let's save this. Now you can see that the first column is taking 2 of the 12 imaginary columns. The second column is taking 5 of the 12 imaginary columns, and the blue one is also taking 5 of the 12 imaginary columns. So these 2, 5, and 5 determine how much of the width the columns will take of the 12 imaginary columns. What this MD does, we'll come back to it later on. First of all, let's see how to add multiple rows. Let's copy this code and paste it. You can now see that there are 2 rows appearing in this HTML file. Let's add a bit of a margin to the second row. So I have used MT3, which is margin top of 3 units between these 2 rows. Now you can see that there is a gap between these 2 rows. You can provide different width to all the columns. So I'll go for a 3, 4, and a 5 for the next row. So you can now see the difference. Let's now understand what exactly this MD means. MD stands for medium. So what this means is that when the width of the screen is of medium value, then these columns would go one below the other. I think this sounds confusing, so let's see it in action. So what will happen if I keep on decreasing the width of the screen? So you can see that after a certain point, these three different columns have been converted to three rows. This happens because I specified MD over here. If I don't specify MD and I refresh it, you can see that the whatever be the width, the 12 imaginary columns are created and three of the columns are assigned to the first column, four to the next, and five to the third. If you add MD back, then you'll be able to see that at this checkpoint, when the width of the screen decreases beyond this point, then the columns are converted to rows. So just like call MD, there is call LG as well. LG stands for large. So let's change all the columns to LG. Let's refresh this page. So now you can see when I keep on decreasing the width of the screen, the first column, first row has changed. So the first row, three columns have changed to three rows at this checkpoint. When I keep on decreasing the width, the second row, three columns also get converted to rows. So using LG, MD, XL, and there are others like SM, which stands for small, XS, which stands for extra small, and XL, which stands for extra large, we can change the checkpoints at which these columns get converted to rows. I haven't yet talked about why we would be using this. So let's add an image to this column to get a better understanding. So I'll add the image we have been using till now. So you can see that the image size is too large and it has gone beyond the column. So let's add a style property saying width should be 100%. So here I'm using a percentage, which means that it will take the entire width provided by its parent class, which is the div, which has a column LG. So whatever width the column has, this image will have the same width. So you can see now that the image is now inside the column. So now if I keep on decreasing the width of the screen, you can see that the image also keeps on shrinking. And if I keep on doing this, after a certain point, this image won't look good if it was reduced further. To get an example, I'll remove the LG tag. Let's keep on decreasing the width, and you can see that the AI symbol has reduced at a point which does not look good. Let's say this was the profile pic of someone or a image which showed some text on it. then this would not be eligible. So to make sure that the image does not decrease beyond a certain point, what we can do is we can add the MD or LG call over here. What this ensures is that beyond a certain point, the image, instead of becoming smaller, would come on a new row so that it does not get decreased beyond a certain point. So this way, even on a width which is this small, the image is clearly visible. Remember, we had talked about a website being responsive. You can use a container to make your website responsive without adding any, like without writing your own code, that what should happen when the checkpoint, when the width of the screen is smaller than this. You don't have to actually write it down yourself. To understand exactly where the checkpoints are, you can go to Bootstrap container documentation. There they have explained exactly the different type of containers, what are the checkpoints, and so on. So you can add padding to the containers, border, background, color, and so on. There are also different type of containers, the container SM, MD, LG, and XL, and the different properties are shown in this table. The container SM would take 100% of the width of the screen when the width is less than 576 pixels. When it's greater than 576 pixels but less than 768, the width of the container would be 540 pixels. So there would be a padding because the width of the screen is larger than 540 pixels. Similarly for medium, large, and extra large. For the extra large container, it will take the 100% width till the size of the screen is 992 pixels, and above that it will take only 1140 pixels. The container fluid would always take 100% width of the screen, provides a full width container. So these are the different type of containers. Then you can even have a look at the Bootstrap 4 grid basics, which will explain to you the columns. So this is a good example which shows the columns in practice. One thing which they have not shown over here, or maybe they have, just a moment. So they have not shown is that you can have multiple rows inside a column as well. So let's say we want to add another image over here. To do that, actually, you can just copy and paste this code. Because the image is taking the 100% width, if you add another image below this, then you the image would need to be shown below below the first image. But if you, let's say, want to add two spans, now they would come in the same line. You can see there is no new line over here. If you want to create a new line, you can create a div, add a class row to it, add the span inside it, similarly make another row, and you can now see that the two spans are in two different rows inside the class, inside the container. Yeah, always remember that in the content you have should always come inside the column. If you add a new row, You should add another column inside of it and put your content. Otherwise, some CSS classes won't work in the way they are supposed to. One more interesting thing is that you can have multiple columns also here as well. So as the width is, yeah, so you can now see inside the single row, there are two columns. To get a more understanding, let's put a BG danger as the background over here and BG primary as the background. So you can see now inside the column, there is one row, there are actually two rows. Inside the first row, there are two columns. As we have not specified the width of the column or whether it's a medium column, it will take half of the width available to its parent row. If you were to specify MD inside of this, you can do that. You can see that the first column takes 4 of the 12 imaginary columns which were divided by the width of the row the columns are inside. And if you keep on decreasing the width after the certain checkpoint, the two columns also collapse down to two rows. So this is a green background, this is a green background. These two columns have collapsed to two different rows. So I hope that Bootstrap grids are clear by the following examples.
So that's it about Bootstrap. So we have already covered Bootstrap grids. Yeah, so that's enough information. Now we have the capability to build our own website. So in the next session, I'll be going step by step on how to create your own homepage, which will look like this. And if you have any doubts, you can ask us in the next session. This is a quick revision of what we have done till now. So we have learned that HTML, the hypertext markup language, is the structure of the web page and it's used for structuring the web page. Next, there is CSS, which is used for styling the HTML tags. JavaScript, which we'll see later on, makes the web pages interactive. Bootstrap is a library having inbuilt CSS and JS codes. Then we had a look at Bootstrap grids. So the general structure of a Bootstrap grid is that there is a container. It can have many rows and each row has 12 columns. In the next session, first we'll be creating our own homepage and after that we will learn about JavaScript. We'll go into the details in the later session.
Now we'll have a mentorship session